Well, we have some big news because it looks like those $2,000 checks that President Trump keeps on promising, it looks like that is almost a done deal. It's almost a guarantee it's going to happen, but it may not be coming from Republicans. It may be coming from Democrats too. And we have some big updates that we need to get to on that front. But look at this. It says stimulus check update. Andrew Yang says Democrats should back the Trump plan. Now, what exactly does he mean? Well, we're going to get to that in just a moment. But the good news is, and I've said this over the past few days, is Democrats are now jumping on board with President Trump's plan. And I have a little bit of insight as to why, and I'll share that in just a moment. Let me read this to you. It says, former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang endorsed President Donald Trump's plan to send money directly to Americans, saying that Democrats should get on board with the proposal. He said, Democrats in theory should be all for anything that helps the working class of this country. Now, I asked a friend of mine who is very in touch with what's going on here, okay? And one of the things that he said was that Democrats are likely going to jump on board. And it's just a matter of time before they do. There's no rush to do it yet, simply because these checks are likely coming out closer to the election, or, and this is the big one, maybe after. This may not happen until 2027 in January or February. And I'll explain more on that in a moment. But look at this right here. It says, why does it matter? Trump continues to wrangle with economic issues almost a full year into his second administration, with fluctuating job numbers and inflation still high enough to impact households. That is one of the biggest reasons why the Trump administration, according to reports, is pushing for additional relief, bringing down the cost of food. That's why the Trump administration is negotiating or simply getting rid of and eliminating the tariffs on certain food products, specifically those that are coming from other countries, and it's difficult for us to produce it right here in the United States. But some companies are saying, well, what about us when we produce this knickknack or this widget or this auto part? If we're not producing that in the United States, that's our only option. We got to produce somewhere else. And the issue is prices continue to rise. Now, I want to show you something. President Trump is promising $2,000 tariff checks by mid-2026. Now, this is a very important time. It's very important because this is right before the midterm elections. Now, because of this article from Newsweek, okay, this one that I just showed you, this one right here, the reason why I'm telling you this is because I asked a friend of mine, okay, and I asked him a simple question. This is what I asked him. I said, why do you think Democrats are jumping on board with Trump's plan to send $2,000 tariff rebate checks to the American people? And he responded with this. They don't support the tariff rebate checks. They support sending money back to the people. I believe they are jumping on board because they know that these will happen in one way or another. What I expect to have happen is they will push to make the checks bigger if voters vote for them in the election in 2026. Remember when Biden promised $2,000 checks if voters got Ossoff and Warnock in? I expect that's going to happen again. Now, if you don't know what that's referring to, it's this. President Biden says if voters elected Georgia's John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, and this was back in 2021, right? I think this was a special election, whatever, right? It would lead to $2,000 stimulus checks. That's what President Biden said. That's what he promised. Okay, I'll read it to you. It says, if you send John and the Reverend to Washington, those $2,000 checks will go out the door, restoring hope and decency and honor for so many people who are struggling right now. That's what President Biden said, or former President Joe Biden said. This was back in 2021. Well, here's the thing. The voters voted. They chose John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock. They were both elected, and stimulus checks did go out. However, it was not to the tune of $2,000. because President Trump originally he sent out $600 checks. Then that meant President Biden only had to send out an additional $1,400 to make it $2,000 total. That's essentially what happened. Now, here's where things are getting interesting. I want to play something for you. Listen to this right here.
Trump has talked about sending out $2,000 checks to U.S. citizens. Earlier this year, he also talked about sending a Doge dividend. That didn't materialize. Should U.S. Citizens expect the $2,000 proposal? Is the White House committed to making that happen?
The White House is committed to making that happen, yes, and we are currently exploring all legal options to get that done. I don't have a timeline for you or any further details, but I can confirm for you that the president made it clear he wants to make it happen, and so his team of economic advisors are looking into it, and when we have an update, we'll provide one.
So, she simply said that they're looking at all options. Okay, and the reason why I'm showing you that is because of this. It says President Trump signs 4 executive orders providing or extending COVID relief. Now, this was back on August 10th of 2020. Okay, President Trump signed these executive orders, and he extended the relief. Now, what this allowed him to do is take money from things like FEMA and other things. I'm going to read this to you really quick, okay? Look at this. It says on August 8th, 2020, President Trump issued an executive order and 3 memoranda to his cabinet and executive agency heads that provide or extend COVID relief to individuals and businesses. One memorandum was issued to the Secretary of Labor, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, and provides for supplemental unemployment payments to certain eligible claimants at up to $400 per week until the earlier of when the $25 billion allocated by the president is depleted, or December 6, 2020. The second memorandum was issued to the Secretary of the Treasury and temporarily defers the collection and payment of certain payroll taxes from compensation but paid between September 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. A third memorandum was issued to the Secretary of Education and extends student loan payment deferment and reduction of student loan interest rates to 0 until December 31st, 2020. The executive order directs various cabinet and executive agency heads to find means of limiting evictions and foreclosures. Now, why is all that important? Because President Trump did not go through Congress. He went and used an executive order. That was the big thing. He found a way around Congress. Okay, that's what happened. Now, granted, that was a national emergency. Okay, we had a massive emergency, not just here in the United States, but around the entire world. So obviously, things were being used then that can't be used now. But President Trump is pushing through tariffs because he says this is a national emergency, that we have a trade deficit. Okay? Now, this is the reason why it's such a big deal. President Trump is he's not going to go through Congress if he can avoid it, because he knows going through Congress is only going to delay things. It's only going to take things longer. Now, can he go and pass a bill or go and sign an executive order to take money from one agency and give it to another? Well, that's where many experts and multiple economists said that it was a problem if that judge, or those 2 judges, they forced the Trump administration to send out SNAP benefits, pretty much deplete the contingency funds, okay, take all that money, and take money from other agencies in order to send the money for SNAP beneficiaries. And many experts said that right there is setting a terrible precedent, because what that opens the door for is President Trump can now take funds from other agencies and push them towards his own agenda. So, this, according to reports as of this morning, what we are hearing is Democrats are jumping on board because they know this is going to happen one way or another. Whether it's going to be a tariff rebate check, a stimulus check, a tax credit, an enhancement to something else. We don't know. But what we have heard is that this is coming. There's going to be massive relief coming at some point. Here's the next thing. Why President Trump's $2,000 tariff checks might not actually be $2,000. It's simple math. Right now, the expectation is that, and President Trump already said this, it will be between $1,000 and $2,000. Okay, that's what he said. Made it very clear. But the math isn't working. If we send a check to 150 million Americans and we send a $2,000 check, that means we need $300 billion in the bank. We don't have that. We have not actually received that much money from tariffs as of yet. It is projected we will, but again, it hasn't happened yet. And what Republicans do not want is to go into a deeper deficit in order to pay a $2,000 tariff rebate check to millions of Americans. So we're going to find out soon enough what exactly is on the table. But for now, just understand this is something they're looking at to pass or to make an executive order, but it likely wouldn't happen in the first part of 2026. There's probably a 0.1% chance we see any type of payment in 2025, but the expectation is sometime after August 2026 or before March of 2027. So that's what we know as of right now. There are a lot of promising things regarding these $2,000 checks, but it is going to take a little bit of time. So as we get more information on this, I promise I'll bring you all the latest news and updates as soon as we get it. As of today, that is what we know. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.